The listing didn't stay online for long. A small, aging house at the end of a quiet street, priced far below anything nearby. Most people ignored it, assuming something had to be wrong. Daniel didn't. He had been searching for weeks, barely sleeping, refreshing listings constantly, and when he saw it, he called immediately. The landlord sounded distant, almost hesitant, mentioning that the previous tenants had left suddenly, abandoning most of their belongings. He described the house as difficult, but refused to explain further. Daniel didn't care. The price was too good. He moved in 2 days later. At first, everything felt normal. The house was old, with creaking floors and narrow hallways, but nothing unusual. The first 2 nights passed quietly. On the 3rd night, Daniel noticed something that didn't make sense. At the end of the hallway, where there had only been a blank wall, there was now a door. It was narrow, slightly darker than the others, with a worn metal handle that looked older than everything else. He stood there, trying to convince himself it had always been there, but something felt off. He opened it slowly. Inside was a small room with no windows. A single exposed light bulb hung from the ceiling, swaying slightly. The air felt colder, heavier. The walls were covered in faint vertical scratches. Daniel stepped inside. The door closed behind him with a quiet click. He turned instantly, grabbing the handle, but it wouldn't move. His breathing became louder in the silence. Then he heard it. A soft sound behind him, like someone shifting their weight. He turned slowly. Nothing. But the scratches on the wall looked different. Fresher. Deeper. Another sound followed, closer this time, like breathing that wasn't his. The light flickered. For a brief moment, something stood in the corner. Tall, thin, completely still, watching. When the light steadied, it was gone. The door suddenly opened. Daniel stumbled back into the hallway, his heart racing. He turned to look again. The door was gone. Just a plain wall. He ran his hands over it, searching for any outline, but there was nothing. He left the house the next morning without taking most of his things. Days later, the listing appeared again. The new tenant reported no hallway at all. According to the official layout, the house never had one. But in a photo taken during Daniel's stay, there was clearly a corridor. And at the end of it, a narrow door slightly open, with something dark standing just inside, barely visible in the shadow. Story 2. The family that stayed too long. The Carter family moved in quietly, without drawing much attention. A couple in their mid-30s and their young daughter. They were polite but distant, the kind of neighbors who waved but didn't talk much. For the first few weeks, everything seemed normal. Then the lights started staying on all night. Not just one room, every window glowing long after midnight. At first, no one thought much of it. But then came the sounds. Footsteps late at night, faint but constant, moving through the house in ways that didn't make sense. Sometimes upstairs, sometimes downstairs, sometimes seeming to pass through walls. One neighbor, who often stayed up late, mentioned seeing more than 3 silhouettes moving behind the curtains. Too many for a family of 3. A week later, the daughter stopped going outside. She used to play in the yard every afternoon, but suddenly, she was gone. The parents said she was sick, but the light in her room never turned off, and shadows moved behind the curtains even when no one entered or left. Then came the voices. Low, overlapping murmurs drifting through open windows at night. Conversations that couldn't be understood. Whenever someone got close enough to listen, the voices would stop immediately, as if they knew they were being heard. Eventually, a welfare check was called. When authorities arrived, the front door was unlocked. Inside, the house was silent in a way that felt unnatural, like all sound had been removed. Every light was on, every room empty, until they reached the master bedroom. The Carter family was sitting on the bed, perfectly still, facing the door. Their eyes were open, their expressions blank. They were alive, but completely unresponsive. They didn't react to voices, to touch, to anything. It was as if something had emptied them from the inside. They were taken away, but none of them ever spoke again. The house was later cleaned and sold. Months passed before a new family moved in. For a while, everything seemed normal. Then one night, a neighbor looked toward the house and felt a sense of familiarity they couldn't explain. Multiple silhouettes were moving behind the windows again. Too many. And in the upstairs bedroom, 3 figures were sitting on the bed, perfectly still, facing the door, waiting. Exactly as they had been found before. But this time, one of the figures slowly turned its head toward the window, as if it knew it was being watched. Story 3. The House That Recorded Everything. Victor installed the cameras after hearing about a break-in nearby. It was a simple system, covering the entrances, the living room, and the hallway. Everything connected to his phone. For weeks, nothing unusual happened. Then one night, he received a notification. Motion detected in the hallway. He opened the app immediately. The camera showed the hallway, empty at first. Then a figure stepped into view. It looked exactly like him. Same height, same clothes. But Victor was standing in his kitchen, watching it happen. He checked the hallway in person. Nothing. The next night, it happened again. This time, the figure moved slowly down the hallway, stopping at each door, tilting its head as if listening. Victor watched from his room, too afraid to go out. The figure stopped at his door. It stood there for several seconds, completely still. Then it raised its hand and knocked 3 times. The sound came only from the phone. The real hallway was silent. Over the next few days, the footage became worse.
The cameras started showing events before they happened. Victor would see himself walking through the house hours before he actually did, sometimes doing things he didn't remember doing. Then one night, something appeared behind the figure, a taller shape, distorted, watching. Victor tried to shut the system down, but the recordings didn't stop. New clips kept appearing on his phone with timestamps from the future. The final video was short, only a few seconds. The hallway stood empty. Then Victor stepped into frame, looking directly at the camera with a calm, unnatural expression. He walked closer, leaned in, and whispered something. When the audio was enhanced, the words became clear. "You shouldn't be watching this." The video ended. Victor was reported missing the next day. The house was searched. Nothing unusual was found. The cameras were removed. But one detail made it worse. The final video wasn't recorded by any camera in the house. According to the metadata, it was recorded from inside the camera itself. And in a single frame near the end, barely visible in the darkness behind the lens, there was something else, standing still, watching him, as if it had been there the entire time. If you liked the video, subscribe to the channel and share your scary story in the comments.